Welcome back to Strangely Canadian. In today's video, was D.B. Cooper French-Canadian? But first, take a few moments to subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new content. D.B. Cooper has become one of the most notorious bandits of the 20th century. The man planned one of the greatest heists of all time. Did he survive his jump? What happened to the money? And who was he are still all unanswered questions. Well, let's back up just a little in case some of you do not know who D.B. Cooper was. In 1971, Dan Cooper hijacked a flight for $200,000 in ransom, then disappeared after parachuting off of the plane. The case remains the only unsolved criminal airline hijacking of all time. The man who came to be known as D.B. Cooper used a bomb threat to hijack a flight from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington on November the 24th, 1971. After the jet landed in Seattle, passengers disembarked and $200,000 was placed on board, along with parachutes requested by the hijacker. The plane then took off for Mexico City. Mid-flight, Cooper jumped off of the plane and subsequently disappeared. The FBI spent years investigating the case, which was called NORJAC, for Northwest Hijacking. Though hundreds of suspects were considered and $5,800 of the ransom money was found, the hijacker was never identified. In 2016, the FBI said it was closing the investigation, though this decision didn't dim public interest in Cooper. At the time, proof of identity was not required by airlines. Paid $18.52 in cash for one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle on the Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 on board a Boeing jet. He had a bourbon and soda, smoked cigarettes, and gave a flight attendant a note that said, "I have a bomb." He showed the attendant his briefcase, which contained wires and red sticks. The plane's captain was made aware of the hijacking demands of $200,000 in $20 bills, as well as 4 parachutes. Getting the money and the parachutes ready took a few hours, so the flight circled in the air. After making it to Seattle, 36 passengers and 2 crew members disembarked in exchange for the ransom. The plane, staffed by 4 remaining crew members, 2 pilots, a flight engineer, and a flight attendant, then took off for Mexico City. Now, Cooper demanded that the jet fly lower than 10,000 feet at a speed under 200 knots. While the crew was in the cockpit, Cooper lowered the stairs at the back of the plane and jumped out shortly after 8 p.m. The jet continued on to Reno, Nevada. As news of the hijacking spread, a reporting mistake rendered the hijacker's name D.B. Cooper instead of Dan Cooper. This misnaming entered the public lexicon, and D.B. Cooper became famous, an icon, just like Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, etc. After the flight, sketch artist portraits of the hijacker were created. The FBI described Cooper as a white man, 6'1", 170 to 175 pounds, aged mid-40s, olive complexion, brown eyes, black hair, conventional cut, parted on the left. FBI agents collected evidence including the hijacker's clip-on tie, the 8 cigarette butts, though Cooper hadn't left his ransom note behind. Agents also undertook ground search and conducted interviews. More than 800 suspects would come to the Bureau's attention over the first 5 years of the investigation. One theory of the case is that Cooper didn't survive, succumbing either to his jump or to the conditions in which he landed. He left the plane during a storm amid 200-mile-per-hour winds and might not have been able to deploy the chute. Even if his parachute did open, it was not the type that could be steered. And landing in rough wooded terrain at night is dangerous, particularly for a man wearing just a suit and loafers and a trench coat. Law enforcement were in the air following the hijacked flight, but didn't see Cooper jump. Some Cooper aficionados have speculated that instead of the flight path that the FBI used in its investigation, Cooper actually left the plane while it was on what's been dubbed as a western flight path, about 7 miles further west. The manhunt, therefore, might have been focused on the wrong area. In 1980, a boy camping with his family found $5,800 buried on the banks of Washington's Columbia River. Now, the serial numbers on these bills linked them to the Cooper case. However, the location of this discovery near Portland, Oregon, was several miles from Cooper's suspected jump zone of aerial. The area was searched, but no other evidence was located. No bills from the Cooper ransom have been discovered in circulation ever. Since 1971, many men have come under suspicion for possibly being Dan Cooper. Among them are Robert Rexstraw, who was a military veteran with parachute training, who had several brushes with the law. He was dismissed as a suspect by the FBI, but in 2018, a fellow veteran said he decoded messages allegedly sent by Cooper that implicated Rackshaw as being the culprit. Before his death in 2019, Rackshaw at times made cryptic comments about the case rather than denying involvement. In 1972, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. hijacked a Boeing 727, the same type of plane that Cooper targeted. After receiving his ransom, McCoy parachuted from the plane. Despite this matching MO, McCoy did not resemble the sketches of Cooper. After escaping from prison in 1974, McCoy was killed in a shootout with police. Lynn Doyle Cooper's niece, Maria Cooper, reported in 2011 that in 1971 she heard her uncle say, "We did it. Our money problems are over. We hijacked an airplane." The FBI investigated but ended up ruling out Lynn as a suspect. Kenneth Christensen, a military paratrooper who'd worked for Northwestern Orient Airline, was put forward as a potential Cooper suspect by his brother. A year after the hijacking, Christensen was able to purchase a house with cash. William J. Smith, who died in 2018, served in the military and would have been capable of making a parachute jump. A data analyst who considered Smith a likely suspect found that the bankruptcy of Smith's employer placed his pension in jeopardy, which may have spurred him to strike back at another corporate player. In 2016, the FBI announced it was closing the book on its Cooper investigation in order to redirect resources. The Bureau's existing evidence will be preserved. However, Cooper's cigarette butts from the flight, which could contain DNA, are missing. Civilians continue to pursue leads. In 2020, an amateur scientist shared that he'd discovered microscopic bits of algae, diatoms, on the money that had been dug up in 1980. The diatoms on these bills only bloom in spring, and the bills had only one season of diatoms on them. This means that the money did not go into the water at the time of Cooper's November 1971 jump, which had been one of the theories. So how could D.B. Cooper have been French-Canadian? Although fairly obscure in the English-speaking world, since it did not appear in English translation, Dan Cooper, also known as Les Adventures de Dan Cooper, is a Franco-Belgian comic series about a fictional Canadian military flying ace and rocket ship pilot. The comic series was conceived in 1954 as Tintin magazine's answer to the Buck Danny series published in the rival Spirou magazine. It was written and drawn by Belgian Albert Weinberg, who lived from 1922 to 2011. However, a handful of stories were written by Jean-Michel Charlier instead. As per the Franco-Belgian comic tradition, after being serialized in a weekly comic book magazine, each completed storyline would appear as a published album. Dan Cooper is a test pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Early storylines featured futuristic science fiction themes such as piloting a rocket ship to the Martian moon Deimos. However, later stories were more rooted in present-day themes. The comic series nevertheless gained a small measure of notoriety in 2009 in the United States as a result of speculation concerning the identity of the 1971 airplane hijacker who came to be known as D.B. Cooper, but who had actually identified himself as Dan Cooper. Dan Cooper from the comics was skilled with parachuting. The comic book creator was even questioned about the DB Cooper case, but this has not been mentioned very often. The Cooper research team, led by Tom Kay, Tom worked in cooperation with the Seattle-based FBI agent Larry Carr, and they speculated that the hijacker may have chosen an alias based off of the fictional character. Kay and colleagues suggested that the hijacker may have been exposed to the comics while on a tour of duty in Europe, or that he may have been a French Canadian. Some of the comic storylines seemingly match aspects of the D.B. Cooper case, including jumping out of an airplane with a parachute, as well as ransom being delivered in knapsacks, and survival in the wilderness. Could D.B. Cooper have been a French Canadian? Or could he have been inspired by the comic books that he may have seen while on military posting in either Europe or Canada? We'll never know. We can only guess. Thanks for watching. Join me again for more tales that are strangely Canadian. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and check out some more of our videos, including these.